Mate, you know you've made it in life. You know, there's some things that you just got to be. But there it is, the back of a cereal packet. Sir Hubert Wilkins, with Dick Smith Foods on the front, of course. But yeah, we made it big time when you're on the back of, forget the Nutrigrain. This is Nutribites. Good on you, Dick.
This is my friend, Don McIntyre, and this is his shed. Don hasn't ceased adventuring or advocating for an adventurous life for 45 years, and this shed is a culmination of equipment and memories from creating an extraordinary life for both himself and in the support of young adventurers including Jesse Martin, Jessica Watson, and countless others, both young and old. Don is infectious with enthusiasm. He is always laughing, dreaming, and doing. He has more projects and more ideas on the go than any person I've ever met. When he's not in some far-flung place, you'll most often see him on his laptop frantically typing away, connecting, communicating, and pushing projects and ideas forward. In fact, the letter R on Don's keyboard is so worn out, most of his sentences are missing a letter. But it doesn't matter. Life is too short and not every word has to be perfect to be understood. And I think this is the core of the message. With energy, with purpose, with grit, you can make extraordinary things happen, even when you may not have the resources in that moment. Don's hallmark expression is that adventure is any activity with an unknown outcome. We can choose to live comfortably in an attempt to predict and protect ourselves from the unknown. Yet it seems to me, the more we embrace uncertainty and learn to thrive within it, the more fulfilling our lives actually become. A life of adventure is a life well lived. But perhaps most of all, a life of adventure which is shared gives hope and inspiration to those who are yet to step out of their comfort zone and recognize the depth of their own capacity.
This is Sir Hubert Wilkins. We picked it up in Finland. It was actually the President's private yacht for the first 12 years of its life. It was built in 1960. We bought it in 2000, I think it was, 99. Did a refit there, sailed it back across the Baltic, the Atlantic, the Pacific, via Pitcairn Island to New Zealand, and then did a full refit, put the helipad on, got the helicopter, 5-man recompression chamber, nitrox dive gear, everything, and did 3 or 4 years of shitloads of fun. 3 or 4 trips down to Antarctica, helping other expeditions, filming expeditions, conservation, picking up rubbish, Mawson's Hut, all sorts. It was a lot of fun. 2000, with a geophysicist by the name of Charlie Barton, who'd been chasing the magnetic pole for all his life. We were the first people ever on Sir Hubert Wilkins here, supported by Dick Smith Foods, to locate the South Magnetic Pole for the first time in the history of mankind. There was 3 big things that happened in my life that had a big impact and inspiration. 2 were a natural inspiration. 1, I didn't even know how powerful it was until about 30 years later. Okay, so when I'm a kid, I'm walking around the lounge room, making out on a scuba diver while I'm watching all of Jacques Cousteau's, documentaries. And lo and behold, 30, 40 years later, 40, 50 years later, it was in 2000, we ended up with a ship that was every bit as good as Calypso without a lot of the scientific gear. And so that was the impact. I was scuba diving when I was 15. The ocean's been the one constant in my life. The whole idea of exploration and discovery was a big deal. We had grand visions for Sir Hubert Wilkins when we got it. We were supported by Dick Smith Foods. Dick was a big fan for a couple of years, helping us run the whole thing, and unfortunately we never quite made enough sponsorship to make it all happen, and we didn't want to run a shipping business, so after 4 years we got rid of it. But it was a lot of fun for a lot of people, and it was kind of ironic that's how it evolved over that time. So the other one was Robert Knox Johnson, and the first Golden Globe race in Chichester, and that, my first boat I started to build was a replica of Sue Haley. And then in the end, that drew me into the BOC Challenge, so I sailed solo around the world, and one thing led to another. Now I'm running the Golden Globe race, which is replicating some of that. the final one that was a trick, the first book I ever read when I went to first year high school, because I was a bit dyslexic, didn't like reading, but there was a book in the class library called An Island to Oneself by Tom Neale, a New Zealand guy that lived on an island called Suvarov out in the Pacific. And I read it and was really captivated by the whole isolated thing, getting away. And that had a huge impact, and I realised it fully about 15 years ago. It was a subconscious thing, but it made me sort of have that idea of getting out there and just getting away from it all and just looking after your own interests and sort of surviving. And Margie and I, when I was married, we wanted to try and go and live on an island before we were married for isolation, but we couldn't find the right island. But that drew us to do the year in Antarctica. So those three things had a big influence on life. This is my bounty boat, okay? The whole thing, the story of Mutiny on the Bounty and Bligh, obviously captures your imagination. And in 1982, I saw some guys reenact it. Replica of the bounty boat. Bligh's ejected with 18 of his men, and for 4,000 miles they struggled to get back to Kupang. And they did it. It's an epic story. But that reenactment, which was done by a descendant of Bligh, they used the latest navigation gear, and they stopped off in different islands, and they, broke the journey. And I thought, wouldn't it be great one day to do it with only the things Bligh had, like no toilet paper, no charts, very little food and water, and do it as originally as you can. Two greatest open boat journeys in the world are considered to be either William Bligh in his boat, after the mutiny, or Shackleton in the James Caird. And I thought, well, okay, don't build two boats, build this, do the Bligh story, and if it's kind of cool, and then I want to go and do the James Caird trip, I could try it and try and work out which was the worst or the best. Anyway, so myself and three other guys, we set off across the Pacific and had an absolute ball. I lost 18 kilos, I need to do it again, and we had kidney stones, and we nearly all got wrecked one night, and it was a fantastic trip. But the beauty of it was without doubt the best expedition or adventure I've ever done. And the reason is quite simple, because it's so simple. It was just a boat made out of wood. We got sails, ropes, and that's it. There was no nothing. It was just pure adventure and simplicity, and at one with nature, and it really was a hell of a lot of fun. And that's now indirectly led to to our new little adventure, which is the Mini 580, which is a lot of fun, little boat across and around the world. But anyway, so yeah, the bounty boat trip, a hell of an adventure and really cool. But I want to get to those boxes over there. This will be a good one. This will be a good one. Oh, these are our Antarctic tents. These are our Antarctic tents, but these boxes in here are actually... Oh boy. Okay, these are the survival boxes from our year in Antarctica, which are full of food. They were packed in 1994, and they were our emergency food. That wasn't going to get eaten in a hurry. Oh, that feels interesting. I wonder what's in here. We can eat that. Oh wow. Chutney, that'll still be good to go. Usually bars, oh here we go. It's got water in it, that's a bit of a worry. It got moist, I don't know why. Still, it's been 26 years I suppose. Oh, there you go. That's what we've been looking for. Worth a fortune these days. This is matured, highly matured, 26 years old, and you can still use them. We'll take that home. Well, that was fun. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. Like 26 years. A bit of history. Another claim to fame is that Margie and I were recognised all through Europe as being the first ever colonialists to go to Antarctica. In other words, we went there just to live there. It wasn't for scientific, it wasn't for anything else. We just wanted to go and live there. So we went there and set up shop and set up our house and lived there for a year. So it was all about having fun and enjoying life. But we did some good stuff after that for other people. We did a lot of scientific measurements and bits and pieces. But generally it was just to have fun and increase awareness of Antarctic issues, because Antarctica is a bit of a joke really. All the governments are there not for the sake and good of mankind. It's a land grab. When the Madrid Protocol and the Antarctic Treaty comes up for rebuilding in about 20 odd years or something, all the governments have got their eyes on the minerals and the resources and so on. It's not about, looking after the environment and weather. Believe me, half of the stuff that they're there is for a land grab. And it'll come, not in my time, but there's some big challenges ahead, that's for sure. All the timber panels are the furniture inside the hut, and all of these panels are actually the walls of the hut. We had to carry all this down on a 60-foot yacht called Spirit of Sydney and set up our camp there. There was no one there for hundreds of miles. We're completely isolated on our own. So it was all transported down. We built the hut, the boat sailed home and just left Margie and I there for the year. It was a bit of an epic, and we were totally isolated. And sometimes we were trapped inside. The longest was about 20 days, I think it was. We couldn't get outside. And the box itself is 8 feet by 12 feet. So imagine living for a year in your bathroom, and that's it. It was really quite epic. These are the infamous vents. Oh, this brings back memories. The infamous vents that used to lock up with ice, so you had no air inside the hut. But the other incredible thing is that would get all ice in there. This would glow bright purple at night time. The static electricity from the ice particles coming through here starts an St. Elmo's fire, so you'd be asleep in the dark, and all of this in the hut would be bright purple. It was fantastic. Quite crazy. Quite crazy. Oh, better not. That's a bit of history. Look at that. Oh, here's another one. This is a can of John West red salmon. Not pink salmon, red salmon. But what's special about it? You've got to read the label. I ran a race called the Goodman Filter-Watty Bicentennial Around Australia Yacht Race, and there was an entrant in the race it was sponsored by John West, and they did a special edition can of red salmon. And I never forget, they always said to me, the longer you leave this in the can, the more valuable it's worth, and the more it's I've never eaten it. We're going to have to eat this one day. Not for sale, I'm going to eat it one day. So that's from 1988. It still wouldn't be off. The can's still all right. So look at that. There's the logo on the back, see? To Sail Australia 88 was the start of the name. We never got sponsors, so it ended up turning it. And then we got a sponsor, so the name changed. But bloody hell, everything you pick up has got a story. And here we go. That's the burgee from the BOC Challenge. That was my first, one of the early big epics. That was my Australian flag in the 1990 BOC Challenge single-handed round the world race, and I came second in class. That was my racing burgee as well. So my claim to fame when I used to sail. Anyway, and these, look at that. I've been carrying these since 1976. They're actually arrows from Vanuatu when I was cruising in my first little boat, Sky. You know where the bell came from? And they're epics, I don't know whether I'll sell them, can't sell them. That's the funny part is I never like looking back. There's too many things to do looking forwards. So you end up with a shed that resembles your grandfather's shed. If someone ever has to sort this shit out, I'll feel really sorry for them. G'day, I'm Don McIntyre, and this is my shed. And this is a plane that I was building, Kitfox Classic 4 on amphibious floats. And this was an adventure that never happened, but it morphed into another even bigger adventure. And I'm surrounded by about 45 years worth of adventures. And I don't know what to do with it. Maybe it's all for sale. So if you see anything you like, give me a call. But some things I'd never sell.
One of the toughest, maybe the maddest adventurers I know. You wept in that big ocean when you were rolled over. You cried.
Yeah, of course I did, because it's an emotion. It's a raw emotion. It's something that Jessica will go through as well. I mean, when you're out there and you face fear and real loneliness and all those sorts of issues, it has an emotional reaction. And I'm human like everyone else, It's just part of the course.
So convinced is Don McIntyre of Jessica's abilities that he purchased, refitted and loaned her the Pink Lady. And today, it's time to hand over the last of the paperwork to officially put the 16-year-old in charge.
Now, are you really up for this? Have you got your hanky and all that sort of stuff?
I think so.
Ship's passport. I was just saying, this is what everyone wishes I didn't give you.
Oh, hasn't Dad paid you anything?
You're good for it. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
There's the papers, you're on your own.
This is a bit like Dad handing over the car keys.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I won't.
Is she up to it?
Sure is. She's as ready as anyone ever has been. In fact, even more so. She's one of the best prepared young solo circumnavigators to attempt a record like this. She's done it. She's ready to go.